All right, today is December 26th, 2015. We're in Mexico, New York, and we're going to be interviewing Mr. Rector for the Library of Congress. The interviewer is Joseph Messineo. The videographer is Richard Calagiovanni. And good morning, Mr. Rector.
Well, good morning.
We'd like to start with some basics. Can you tell us your full name for the record?
Yes, Laurence James Sparky Rector.
Okay. And where were you born?
I was born in Syracuse, New York.
And when were you born? What's the date of your birth?
My date of birth is 5/29/23.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your family, as in your parents? Were they born here or did they immigrate?
My parents were all born in the United States.
Mm-hmm. What were their names?
My mother's name was Myra Van Dusen, and my father's name was Floyd Rector.
Okay. What did your dad do for a living?
My father worked originally for the Perry Pie Company in Syracuse, New York, and my mother was a business student out of Oswego, New York, but never used it. She was a housewife.
Mm-hmm. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother who unfortunately died at a young age of 16 of pneumonia.
Mm-hmm. What was his name?
His name was Delvin Rector.
Delvin Rector, okay. Let's set the stage just before you're getting ready to enter the service. Just give us an idea of what was going on in your life. For example, when you first heard about Pearl Harbor. Where were you in life and what were you doing and what'd you think?
Well, we had two homes. One that we used for our family to live in, and then next door to us was another home that we used during the strawberry season to house our strawberry pickers. We had a small farm about 2 miles from our hamlet, and we always had at least 1.5 acres to 1.75 acres of strawberries every year. Mm-hmm. And I was over in the home at the time because I had a pool table and a ping pong table in there, and I had a nice little old Franklin stove that I burned wood in, and I had the radio on, and I heard the news that Pearl Harbor had been bombed.
And you were about how old at that time?
I was probably 18 at the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell us what went through your mind when you heard about such a dramatic event happening.
Well, I was astonished, number one, to hear the news, and it excited, and I can remember just going out the door and running across to my home, and my mom was home, my dad was working, and telling them that I'd heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed and we were probably at war.
Mm-hmm. What was their reaction? Were they pretty...
They were excited too, and not thrilled, of course, to think of war.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about when did you enter the service? What made you decide to enter the service initially? Or were you drafted or enlisted? Or
I was originally thought I wanted to go into the Air Force, and I went down to the recruiting office and took the exams and did all of the paperwork and so forth, but I had a great deal of trouble lining up. My depth perception was very poor, so I flunked out, and so I gave up on that idea, and I just went back home and waited.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you were waiting for results of the test or for the draft notice, or what was...
I thought I would be drafted, and
mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to fight it one way or another, and I had no objection to which branch of service I was going to go into because I didn't know any better.
Right. You're young and naive.
Young and naive.
So what year did you, when did you actually enter the service?
I entered the service in February
of 43.
43.
Okay. And which branch of the service did you were you in?
I was in the infantry.
Okay. Could you give us the actual unit number and for the record?
Yes, after I completed basic training, I was sent to the Company G of the 157th Infantry Division,
Okay.
45th Division.
All right. Let's go. Let's back up just a little bit. What was the mood of the community about the time you were entering service? Do you remember kind of the talk in the town, so to speak? And
I remember everybody was obeying everything that the government would ask them to do. We pulled the curtains at night so no light was shining out. Gas rationing had started. Sugar rationing had started. Of course, in those days, most of us all had a small garden anyway, but people were doing more and more of their own production of fruits and vegetables at home.
Mm-hmm. Okay. About the time you're getting ready to leave for basic training, tell us about possibly anything your mother or father said to you. Give us the mood of, it's a big event to send your son off to war. Tell us about that.
Well, unfortunately, when I was in high school, for 2 years, I had a bad condition with my ears and had 2 operations. And my father said, "You'll never be drafted because you're not well enough." And my mother was completely frightened and that I was going to be leaving home as her only child. And so I went down anyway and answered the call, passed the physical, and was drafted into the service.
Right. So they were quite concerned. When you departed, how did you get to basic training? What was the means of transportation?
I went to Syracuse. My parents took me to Syracuse, and we departed by bus from there to Fort Niagara.
Do you recall anything that your mom or dad said to you when you departed?
I really don't recall anything that my dad or mother said. My mother was very upset and very frightened. I remember that.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so you're on your way to Fort Niagara by bus. Tell us a little bit about your first impressions of entering the basic training, or tell us about that.
I was pretty naive, like everybody else. When everybody barked, I jumped and did everything that they said to do. And I was only in Fort Niagara just a very few days. It was extremely cold. I remember that. It was very, very cold, and I was on KP duty in the kitchen, and all of a sudden they came up and said to me, "Get back to your barracks and get ready, you're shipping out." And so back I went and packed my duffel bag and waited for the call.
Okay, so that was an entry point, and where did they send you next?
They sent us to Camp Croft, South Carolina, for basic training.
So tell us, did you go by train or?
Went by train.
Yeah.
Very dirty, very crowded.
How long does it take to get there? Is that a couple-day trip?
I don't remember it being that long. The time went quite fast.
Yeah.
It may have been over. I'm sure it was overnight, and the train, no beds or bunks or anything. It just
sitting on a bench and
sitting on the seat and falling asleep.
Yeah. All right. So they get you off the train. What happens next? What was your first impressions of that camp?
Well, again, everybody was yelling at you, so you just fell in line, and they assigned you to a unit and equipped you with more clothing and sent you to your barracks, and you met your drill sergeant, and you just started to drill. I can't remember that we did a lot of combat training that would help during the war. I can remember that we did a lot of short order marching, and we would do long hikes and things, and we had some bayonet training where we would hit dummies with the bayonet, and then we would crawl under machine gun fire, and which the guns, of course, were all mounted so the bullets weren't coming close to you.
But they were real bullets flying over your head?
I have no idea really if they were real or not. I don't remember hearing anything, so I always thought in my mind that they were blanks. Then we had gas mask training where they put you in the room and you got to put the mask on and then breathe into the mask for a while, and then they'd let you out. I thought the training afterwards and really didn't do much good for
We hear that there was a lot of marching in these at Camp Croft. I've had a couple of gentlemen, Do you remember anything memorable about the drill instructors or any individuals that you became friends with at Camp Croft?
Really didn't make any friends in Camp Croft. There was such a short time. I had some buddies that you hung out with, and we didn't really have a lot of free time. I can remember going into the village there, and it was really the first time I was aware of how the black people were treated, because they had white and black drinking fountains and black and white bathrooms. And I can remember walking down the street in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and if there were a group of Afro-Americans on the street, they would get off to the sidewalk and let you through.
That had to be quite a shock to you coming from the north.
It was a big shock to me to see that as a young person. I didn't realize that was going on in the world. I saw one elderly man on probably a 10 or 11-year-old boy just yelling and screaming in his face, and I don't think he did anything that serious, but it kind of woke me up to what's going on in the world.
Yeah. I imagine you met people from all over the country there when you were in these various places.
Yeah, there were. I don't remember that many of them were from so far away. After I got into my unit, and then I met a lot of people from different states.
Yeah. Now you have a nickname. It's Sparky. Could you just tell us how you got the nickname?
Well, it's a good story. All I know is my mother told me. I asked her once how I got that name, and she said that I was lying in my crib, and the babysitter came by and said, "My, what sparkling eyes you have." And she said people started calling me Sparky, so
there you
whether
go.
it's true or not, I don't know, but it's a good story anyway.
All right. Very good. Most guys pick up their nickname later in life, but you've had that one for a long time, it sounds like.
Forever.
Yeah. All right. So after Camp Croft, where did they send you next?
Well, we left Camp Croft and went up by train up to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. That was our port of departure, and they bused us from Indiantown Gap. They bused us to New York City, and we got on a troop ship and went to Europe.
You did. Do you remember the name of that troop ship? Of course, a lot of them didn't have names.
No, I don't remember the name of the ship. It wasn't that big. It was around 3,000 troops on it.
All right. So where did they take you in Europe? Where was the first stop?
Well, I think our route went pretty much along the coast towards South America, because we had air cover as well as ships. And then we crossed and went through the Gibraltar, and we landed in Oran, Africa.
Oran?
Oran.
Yeah, okay. Did you get any specialized training along the way, or you pretty much trained as an infantryman and that was your job?
No, we were just cannon fodder. We were replacements for guys that had been wounded or killed or captured.
Okay. All right. So just a couple of questions about basic training. Did you find the physical rigors of basic training difficult for you? What was your impression of that?
No, the physical training was easy.
You were in pretty good shape then, probably.
No, I don't know if I was in that good a shape, but we really didn't do anything. I mean, it didn't seem like we were doing much at all.
Okay.
You were tired, you know, from walking and carrying your pack and all that stuff, but no, I thought the training was quite poor, to be honest.
Yeah. Now they were probably trying to get as many guys through the system as possible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They had a lot of casualties in the African campaign, and they needed new blood.
All right. So you've landed in Africa. Just let's walk through it kind of chronologically as you recall it. Tell us, what was your first mission, your first duty?
Well, as soon as we landed in Oran, they put us on what they called the 40 and 8 cars. I think they held 40 people and 12 cows. And the car I was in was really very full, and I was one of the last ones in. And I remember, particularly at night, or if I started to get a little drowsy, that I'd have to pull the door shut so it'd be up against my knees and my body so I didn't tumble out of the car.
These are rail cars?
These were rail cars. Yeah. We were going across towards the Cape Bon Peninsula. And it was quite a few days. At least it seemed like quite a few days at the time. Yeah. I know one time I thought, maybe if I get out of this thing and I'll go up, there's a little seat up where the brakes were on the car. But I got up there and there was already an Arab in place there, so I had to forego that idea and come back down. But
how many cars in the train? Do you remember?
I honestly don't remember how many cars there were, but there were a lot of them because it was a big contingent of people.
How did they feed you? Did you stop along the way to have a mess hall, or did they feed you along the way?
I remember all we got were sea rations along the way. That was it.
That was about it. Tell us about your experience with sea rations. What were they like? What was in a sea ration?
Well, for me they were too greasy, but it was better than nothing, I guess. But you could survive on them all right. They had a lot of.
What kind of things were they always the same? By the way,
pretty much all the same. Yeah.
What was in
three
there?
different. I think there were 3 different flavors, and I've kind of forgotten what they were. But
so you had what, a potted meat of some kind?
Yeah, one of them had meat in it and tasted like Spam a little bit. I don't know, I've kind of forgotten, but I remember they were kind of greasy going down.
Yeah. When you get hungry enough, though, you probably eat it.
Well, they used to have a little small chocolate bar in them too, which was kind of ironic because before I went in the service, I was a candy packer for 4 or 5 months at the Chocolate Works in Fulton, New York. And the line I was working on, we were doing those bars. So. Oh,
interesting.
I might have packed my own bar. I don't know.
Yeah. What was the name of the chocolate company? Was it ultimately became part of Nestle's? Was it?
It was the Peter Kohler Chocolate Company. It was a Swiss company. Yeah. Very productive company at the time.
All right. So you're on this train trip, and where did they take you? Where were you headed?
We were headed towards the Cape Bon Peninsula, and the Germans had fled Africa, but by that time, and they'd set up some kind of a command post, so that when we got off the train, we went in and there was a couple of gentlemen at the desk, and they would ask you, do you want to be a rifleman? Do you want to be a machine gunner? Do you want to be a mortar man, or what? He was kind of serious, and I told him, I said, I'd like to be in the Air Force. And I can remember him put down his pen, and he started laughing. So I told him, I said, I'll be an infantryman. So I was assigned to an infantry unit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so all right. So now you're in. Did that require additional training, or you're pretty much ready to go at this
training,
point?
just waiting to be sent someplace.
All right. So where did they send you?
Well, they sent me to Sicily. Americans had already landed there and had captured most of the country, and I was assigned to the 157th Infantry 2nd Battalion, Company G, and got off the truck, and they met us, the sergeant met us and said, get your rifle and bring your stuff and come with me. And we went up under a big old lemon tree. It was hotter than blue blazes, and he said, we're making a landing behind the German lines tonight, he said, and we've got to go through how to get your pack and rifle and things situated right, so if you get dumped in the water, you be upright rather than upside down. The life preservers that we had were those one belt that went around your waist, and they had a couple of air cartridges, and if you got in the water, well, you blew them, but if they weren't put on right, you went upside down rather than being upright. So that was my first training of how to do it, and then we came back from there and jumped on trucks, and they took us to a port, and we jumped on the boat and landed behind the German lines that night.
When they first told you that you were going to be doing that, what went through your mind as you're still an 18-year-old or whatever? What?
I was like everybody else. I just obeyed commands and went, but I was a little apprehensive because you never know what's going to happen, you know, when you go.
Okay. All right, so tell us about, I guess it would be the landing, correct? What type of vessel did they have you on, and walk us through that?
This one was, the first landing we made was with a ship, and we had to go down the ropes. They threw the ropes over, and then you jumped into the boat. But you had to make sure that, because the waves would take the boat away from the ropes, and if you didn't time it right, the boat you missed, the boat would come back and smack you, drown you, kill you, one or the other. Of course, everybody's in a hurry and they're stepping on your hands and whatever, but I managed to get in the boat with no problem. And
what time of day was this? Was the landing?
What kind of bay?
No, what time of day?
This was a night landing that we had. Okay. I've forgotten what time it was.
Now you're getting into a Higgins boat, or what type of craft were you getting?
A Higgins boat.
Okay. Is that the first time you had been in a Higgins boat?
That's the first time.
Okay, so not a lot of training with the Higgins boat, obviously.
No,
it was like on-the-job training.
No training at all. It just, you were a replacement. You were a casualty replacement is what you were.
Okay, so you're on the, about how many would fit in a Higgins boat?
I would guess there were probably 25 to 30, all crowded in, crouched down, of course, and waiting for it to hit the beach and drop the front of it. And
how far do you think you were from the vessel, the large vessel, to the beach? How far did the Higgins boat have to traverse?
We were quite close. I would say maybe 300 or 400 yards.
And then what goes on in a Higgins boat from the time you get off that rope ladder until the time you hit that beach? Is there any conversation, or what's going on?
It was quiet, and you're nervous, and because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to be fired upon or what's going to happen.
Did you find at any point, tell us if you're comfortable, a little bit about your faith. Is that one of those times that you started to pray, or what
Well,
did you-
there's no atheists in foxholes.
or in Higgins
Or
boats,
in
I guess, right?
Higgins boats or in combat. I had a good religious background when I was growing up, and I believed in the Lord, and it affirmed my faith more the longer I was in the service. I can tell you that.
He was watching out for you.
Yes,
He was. Yeah.
it can't be all luck.
Right. Okay. All right. So the Higgins boat is approaching the beach. Just take us with as much detail as you can through the next steps of this process.
Well, we were very fortunate because the Germans had fled. They were gone.
Well, that's a good thing.
So that was a good thing. And so we just rushed ashore and went to the positions that we were supposed to, and they gathered us together, and there was no opposition, so we just stayed there in a company group.
And did I ask you, where was that landing? What was the location?
It was near Palermo.
Okay. So you're still in Sicily, right? Palermo's in Sicily, I believe. Yeah. Okay. So how long did they have you there? What were you keeping busy with once you
Well,
got there?
once we landed and behind, and the Germans had fled, they put us all back together again, and they had one meeting and said, "Get ready because we're going to make another landing behind the German lines." So a couple days later, we went again, and this time I was on a ship. I've kind of forgotten the names of them, but had a couple of runways down. But it was a little exciting on that trip because we were running at night, and we collided with another ship. I was way in the back. Of course, the stairway is so narrow to go down and up. There was only one way, and myself, along with a dozen other guys, we got, thrown out on the floor, and we're crawling around each other, and you're looking up, and I'm just looking up, and I'm saying, it's all over. I'm going to drown. There's no way I'm going to get out of this boat, And it was nice to hear somebody finally come to the top and say, we're okay. So
the vessels were both viable after the collision? They both?
Yes, both
were
boats
fine?
were. Fortunately, they collided this way.
Just kind of bounced
and,
off each other?
But just bumped into each other hard.
Right.
And
Any concept of how many vessels of that size were in this particular landing?
I was aware of maybe 3 or 4 is all. There may have been more. There may have been.
Yeah. Okay. So did you know where you were landing at that point, or subsequently?
All I knew is that we were still below Palermo, and we were gonna make another landing behind the German lines. But this one was not only with the ships colliding, but when we landed, we were in a minefield, and fortunately, we got through it. I don't recall anybody getting hurt, but you had to be very careful.
How did they get you through the minefield? Did they have somebody looking for the mines, or how did
I'm sure they probably had
they made a path?
minesweepers going ahead, and so when we came along, they just said we're in a minefield, so be very careful.
Was there any naval bombardment in advance of your landing?
We had no bombardment at all.
What kind of mechanisms, tanks or trucks or whatever, did they land you with? Was there any other support from that standpoint?
Nothing that I was aware of.
So pretty much the infantry went
Just
in there?
an infantry landing behind the lines.
Okay. All right. So did you meet opposition at that point, or tell us
No
about
opposition, just the minefield.
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Okay. How long did they have you stay there?
Well, the war ended because the Germans evacuated back to Italy, the southern part of Italy, and then we patrolled. The beaches were absolutely gorgeous in Sicily, and I think our walk was maybe between 2 and 4 miles at night, and we'd have to walk back and forth and patrol the beach because they thought they'd probably counterattack and come back, but that didn't happen.
Never happened. Okay. So now they're probably no longer on Sicily at all. Where were you headed next?
Well, after we completed the Sicilian campaign, then they invaded Italy at Salerno.
So that was done by way of landing as
And
well?
that was our next landing.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we landed and didn't have any problem getting ashore. We had a lot of bombardment, naval ships. I can remember it seemed like the grass would, when shells would go over, would almost lay down flat, and we did have a lot of opposition, and there was quite a lot of severe fighting all the way, and we finally got in towards the bottom of the mountains and through Naples, and after we got through the Salerno campaign, it was winter time, and I can remember we being in the in the mountains.
So at Salerno, how many days did it take to secure your objective at Salerno? And
Well, it was quite a while because that fighting was the Germans weren't going to give up easily. Of course, they never did. They were little fanatics.
did they have fixed positions overlooking the beach?
Oh, they did, yes.
And what was the nature of that? Tell us about what they did to try to repel you. What kind of equipment did they use and techniques?
Well, I think the things I remember the most were they had a weapon called the Screamin' Mimi, and it fired about 6 mortar shots all at the same time, and of course they were very dangerous. They hit the ground and splinter all over the place. And they had the 88 gun, which was a terrific weapon for them, and they also had the burp gun, as we called, like our Tommy gun, and they used it. But the Germans were tenacious fighters. They did not give up easily at all.
We always hear a lot about the German 88. That gun seems to be one of the most respected guns on the battlefield.
I couldn't hear you.
We hear a lot about the German 88.
Yes.
Very respected weapon.
It certainly was.
Yeah. Very accurate, very powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah. At this point, have you experienced casualties from some of your comrades?
Oh yes, yeah. We had several casualties. So we got into the mountains in Salerno. That was the war kind of hit what I guess you'd call it a dead spell. It was really too cold to fight, and everybody was cold. There was winter time, and as I can remember, we'd have 8 days on the front, and we'd have 4 days in reserve, but we were high up, and the trail was very, very narrow, and we had, you couldn't dig. You'd have to take your shelter half and combine it with somebody else and put it between rocks and boulders and things. And they would send us out on patrol. Most every night you'd be out on patrol looking. They always wanted you to get a prisoner. They'd always call you down and say, get us a prisoner, which was pretty hard to do. But you could hear them every night you could hear the Germans sinking mines in. You could hear them jingling and jangling down there.
Yeah.
And I can remember one night I had to relieve myself, and when we first went in there, we didn't have very good equipment in terms of warmth. We had the old heavy wool coats and things. And we finally got what they called a tanker suit, which was pretty nice. It was zippered up, and you get into it, and it was warm. But I can remember coming back in after relieving myself, and my hands were so cold I couldn't zip up my zipper. I had to ask my foxhole buddy to zip up my suit for me because I just couldn't make my fingers work. Wow. We had a lot of illness. That was when trench foot started to come up. Nobody had heard about that before.
Can you describe trench foot for us? What are the symptoms of trench foot?
It came as a result of getting your feet wet, and your feet would swell completely up. If you took your shoes off, you wouldn't get them back on again. So pretty much left your shoes on all the time.
Were there any problems with gangrene as a result of that?
I don't recall anybody having gangrene, but all I know is we were short of men, and I wound up as an assistant squad leader, and we were so high up that the mules couldn't get where we were. I'd have to go down to where the mules could get to, and bring up water and ammunition and whatever. And then we were always helping somebody that was either sick or had trench foot, and help them get down to a mule and get them on the mule and put them back down. The trails were extremely narrow and slippery, and sometimes the mules would even fall off of them.
So it sounded like it was pretty cold and pretty uncomfortable.
It was brutal cold.
Yeah.
And then, of course, at that time, when we'd be up 8 days, we'd come back for 4. It was raining down below the mountains, and it was just, the mud was unbelievable. It would be up to the hubcaps on the trucks and Jeeps and things. So you're always sleeping in the wet, and it was cold and damp.
Were you getting any hot meals at this point?
When you were down at the base, yeah, you get a warm meal from the kitchen, which was nice.
Yeah. How was the food out in the field when they were cooking it for you? Pretty good?
I thought it was delicious, because you get anything compared to sea rations was a lot better than that. Yeah.
So how long do you think you were in that location?
We were in there pretty much all winter long. Probably, November, December, January, February. And then when spring started to come, they asked us to attack this mountain. I remember the name of it very well, 1010, and it was very steep and very rocky. You couldn't climb it straight up. You had to go
switch
back and forth.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine, he was a little older than I was quite a little older actually. He's about 10 years older than I was. He was the lead scout, and I was the second scout. And of course, old Nimblefoot here, we got almost to the top, and it was dark. It was dark when we left and to attack, and I hit this stone, and it started to roll and make noise, and we were right by a German outpost, and he threw a grenade, and fortunately he threw it between us. So neither one of us got hurt, but the the top of the mountain was very flat, and the Germans had a machine gun on that side, one on that, a crossfire. And we couldn't get over that. There was no way we could get over the top of it. Mm-hmm. And so we were laying there, and they threw air bursts on us all day long, and they were tossing mortars. And I remember there was one gentleman laying next to me. I didn't say anything to him. He didn't say anything to me either. And we were just kind of guarding the flanks of our attacking unit, and they finally said, Sergeant called to me and he said, Rector, I want you to go with that machine gunner over there, farther out on the flank. I said, okay, and I reached over to shake this guy, and he said, my sergeant said, well, don't bother, he's dead. The poor guy had taken a bullet through the head, and somebody pulled his cap down. We had wool cap, and they pulled it down over his face. I didn't even realize it. I just laying there. So
what kind of goes through your mind when you get that kind of surprise?
Well, I don't mean to be cold-hearted, but it just happens. You know, it could happen to you at most any time. But they put us all out they put a lot of us out on the flanks around the mountain and all the way down the hill and the mountain, whatever. And so finally they came and they took the machine gunner away from me, and they told me to stay there, and I did. So I was there all night. This was early in the morning when we jumped off, like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. The night came, and I'm still there. I don't see anybody. So dawn came, and I'm still there, and I don't see anybody. And I said, something's wrong here. So I took the safety off my rifle, and I started down the mountain, and I started going more towards the center. And it was pretty dusk, and I saw this figure coming towards me, and he didn't see me. So I stayed behind this big boulder and kept an eye on him, and he kept coming, so it was one of our guys. So here's the two of us, and we were at the very top. And so we both started down then, and eventually we got down below. There were 12 of us. They'd left us there. They forgot us. So we got to the bottom, and we formed a little area of our own to guard. So we took turns. It was kind of a dry little river bottom, and so we put one guy on each end of it, and the rest of us went and got a little sleep, and then when they got tired, they'd come over and wake us up, and then we'd do it. And then when night came, we normally in those days they laid a telephone wire, and we found the end of the wire, and so we followed that backwards. And again, we were lucky. We came up on our own outpost.
How long was that wire? I mean, how far away was the wire strung out?
It goes from the command post all the way up, because that was the only communications they had, except those little radios we used to put over our shoulder, which is another story. They weren't that good, so they always had a wire to lay. But it led right back to the outpost. It was a heavy machine gun, and they challenged us, which was good. They didn't fire first.
What was the challenge? Tell us how the procedure of verifying identities.
They'd yell, halt.
And what did you say?
And they'd want the password. We said, we don't have the password.
So how'd you convince them?
Then one of us went up, and they looked us over and said, okay, and they let us through. So we got back to our company.
Yeah.
That was
Pretty fortunate.
we were very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're still at Salerno, correct? Roughly that
Right.
area. All right. Is there keep walking us through where, to the end of Salerno, and then we'll take a little break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, after the spring came, and then they broke out, and of course there were other divisions involved in it too, and ours was pulled back. They sent us back to Naples, and they said we were going to have more amphibious training and go. I don't ever remember any amphibious training, but it sounded good.
Yeah.
We got nice warm meals, and we were in.
Okay, so let's take it from when you got to Naples. Tell us a little bit about what you did in Naples.
Well, we got back to Naples, and we were in a big bivouac area, and I was assigned to be a runner to deliver messages from our company headquarters back to the battalion. And my buddy, my tent buddy, he had the same position that I did. They had a huge stage behind us. Just so happened that we were put at the back of the area, no particular reason, just the luck of the draw. So Naples was open, and so we used to figured out we could take turns. We could go AWOL. So one day I would take off and go to Naples and do what I wanted to do, and I got some nice black market dinners, beef. I guess it was beef, could have been horse meat, but they tasted very good. And of course, lots of wine with the dinner. And I'd come back, and then my buddy would go the next day. Well, one day the payroll came in, and my buddy had gone AWOL. That was his day to go to Naples, and so I tried to hide as much as I could all day long, because they called me down and said to sign the payroll. I said, okay, and they said, make sure you send Weaver down. I said, okay. So I went back, and I tried to hide all day, but they kept pestering me to get Weaver, and finally my first sergeant, he called me down and he said, where's Weaver? So I said, by then I knew that Weaver had been caught by the MPs in an area that he shouldn't be in. So poor Weaver, he was put in jail down there, and of course the Germans had very few airplanes left, but they would come over at night and bomb, and they'd take him out of the jail and take him into some kind of a tunnel area. But Weaver said the worst part was they'd roll the sea rations in under the bars for him to eat. And when he came back, he had to dig a 7x7 garbage pit. And I can remember the sergeant said, why weren't you down there? And I said, well, it's not my day to go. So we had a big laugh about that, but we didn't get much training there that I remember.
How long did they make Weaver stay in the brig or in the prison?
He was only there, I think, maybe 2 days, maybe 3.
Just wanted to get his attention.
Yeah, it just...
Yeah. So what kind of things did you do in Naples that you can tell us about? Besides have dinner.
Well, poor Weaver, he went in the wrong place. A lot of them were... There was a lot of venereal disease, of course, and you really had to stay away from that malarkey. But there were some nice things to see. There was an old architecture and paste them. Some of it hadn't been completely destroyed and by age, and it's a historic place. And there were a lot of nice places in Naples that you could go and have a good day. You'd have to take a winding route all around because the black market was functioning well in terms of food and things, but was costly. But who cared? You weren't going to need the money anyway. So,
how did the people treat you, the Italians, when you were there?
They were fine. They were
pretty much happy that it was.
Yeah, they were. I think they were happy to see Mussolini go.
Yeah.
I know a bar of soap or a piece of soap would get you anything you wanted from the women. If you had extra smokes and things. Yeah. Remember the kids, if we were in our chow line and you were coming through and you had food left over, they all had a can. They'd take your leftover food as quick as anything. I saw one guy liberate a chicken and he just beheaded it by twisting it, and he threw the head away. And quite about 3 guys were climbing over each other to get that head just to put it in water and boil it and make the soup taste a little better than water.
Yeah, know? So they were pretty hungry.
Oh, yeah. They didn't have much food for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Felt bad for the kids. Felt bad for all of them, really, but the children in particular. You hate to see kids eat garbage, but
sure.
When you get hungry, you'll do anything.
Yeah. Okay. So what came next?
Well, we had a few meetings, and I remember General Patton coming in and talking to the non-commissioned officers and the commissioned officers, and of course the sirens are going, and he's standing up in his vehicle as he comes through, and that was kind of impressive to see that. I can remember him saying to the non-commissioned officers, he said, when we hit the beach, he said, some of them are going to go forward, some of them are going to go backwards. Shoot the bastards. I said, I guess I just better crawl a little bit forward all the time then for this. But I don't remember that we had a lot of training on getting on ships and running ashore or anything. We just were bivouacked there, and then all of a sudden they told us in a meeting that we were going to land behind the German lines again. So we got on the ships, and we were in the harbor for about 3 days. They'd let you swim, but you can imagine the water was all oily and you didn't have enough water for a shower, so that really didn't turn me on too much. I think I could save that time for something better. So we'd have meetings, and my particular area where we were going, they told us there was a big seawall and that the torpedo boys were going to come in and they were going to blow a hole in it and we could go through the wall. So off we go, and we sailed up and got off the ships and into the Higgins boats, and we were running around, and all of a sudden somebody blows the horn and we took off to the beach. And our particular boat, we hit a sandbar. We probably were a good 100 yards offshore, and I can remember we all turned to the boatsman and said, "Gun it." So he did, and we went through the sandbar, and we went right up on the beach. I didn't even get the soles of my shoes wet. We run off, and sure enough, there's the hole. We ran through the hole. There was a big firefight on our left, a big firefight on our right, but my unit, we just took off straight. Made me a little nervous because I didn't know who was on my left and who was on my right, but we went through Anzio and took off, and the Germans were retreating.
Was that on day one of Anzio?
That was
or
the first day of
first
Anzio.
day.
Yeah,
That was a particularly bloody engagement, as I
yeah,
recall.
It was. We got off and we went into the what they call the caves. They were big talk caves, and we had to carry ammunition and water and everything in. But the British had landed and they'd gotten almost to Rome. Then the Germans attacked with like 10 divisions, and they had all the high ground. And I know when we were walking in, you couldn't hit the ground because you could see the tracer bullets coming. You could hear them; they'd be stomping at your feet. And some British guy came up to me. I was walking along, and he said, "Laddie, don't walk in the road." He said, "because it's all mined all the way up through." And so we got into the caves there with my unit, and the Germans attacked and attacked and attacked. It got pretty rough. We had our own artillery. Captain Robinson, he had our own artillery shelling on top of us because the Germans were all around. Eventually we were cut off for 3 days. We didn't have any water. We didn't have any food except what we had with us. And I can remember being with one of our machine gunners, and I can still see them. There was a German machine gun crew. Why they ever did it, I don't know, but they stood up and they ran. He just cut them down like 10 pins. Boom, boom, boom. They just went like bowling pins. They just toppled. So I was guarding a hole, and it was a small hole, not probably 5 or 6 feet. And I said, "Can't too many people come through there at one time." So instead of staying near the hole, I went back about 15 yards and stayed behind it. And when I was up by the hole, I could hear them putting the shell in their 88 to shoot down through the holes and things. And so I said, "I think I'd better get out of here quick." And 2 guys came along and they said, "Oh, we're going up there." I said, "If I were you, I think I'd stay back here." Well, one blast came and they both got wounded, and they had to get out of there and be evacuated back in the cave. So they had a medical unit back there. And I was still guarding the hole, and my platoon officer came along and he said, "Rector," he said, "you got to get this message and take it back to headquarters." So I said, "Okay." So I'm going back, but huge chunks of this talk would fall from the ceiling down. I mean, huge
From the
chunks.
concussion of the...
Yeah, from the shelling, because they were shelling us on top, the Germans as well as us. And was lucky to get back without getting knocked in the noggin with one of those. And while I was gone, my platoon was captured. So back in there again, I came back, and of course I was attached to a squad there, and so we fought through that, and finally decided to evacuate the caves and get out. Well, we had quite a lot of wounded, and our medical officer, Captain Graffadino, he said, I don't want to leave the wounded. So we put the ones that could walk together, and then we put some guys on stretchers, and we had 4 guys to a stretcher. We got out about 50 yards maybe, and the shelling was so intense that we had to take and come back in with them. And then it was like they said, every man for himself. And Graffadino, Dr. Graffadino, wouldn't leave them. So he stayed, and they were all captured. I can remember just taking off and hurdling barbed wire and everything else, and they were shooting and shelling, and they were dropping flares, and there were some like haystacks, and they set those on fire, and we were illuminated by them. But fortunately, unfortunately, I got back and dug a hole, and they refilled all our ranks again with replacements. And then we were dug in. Of course, it was a perimeter there, like a half moon. I can remember staying in the holes, and you couldn't dig down very deep because of Anzio was very low. You'd get water, and if you wanted to relieve yourself during the day, you kind of had to take your helmet off and take the helmet liner out and then slide it under your rear end like you're getting on a bedpan, and then dump it out and take a little water and clean out the helmet and go on your way. I remember they ran horses over us one time. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. And then one day they ran sheep over us in the front lines. And of course, they were laying mines all the time. There wasn't a lot of activity. I don't remember they sent us out on patrols at all. But there was constant shelling. And then one day, I have no idea why they did it, but they wanted our platoon to move, and they moved us in the daylight. And my platoon officer gave me one of those radios, and he and I were together, and we started out 15 paces apart, walking, and they just shelled the daylights out of us. And I can remember we came to a little spot in the road, and there was just kind of a little knoll. And I think we heard the shell at the same time, the both of us. And we hit the ground, but the shell hit just beyond us and went that way. But it was enough force that it picked both of us up and slammed us to the ground. Well, that was too close for comfort, but it was well after dark before we got everybody in the company together, because my radio wouldn't work more than probably 200 yards away from anybody. But why they ever moved us, I don't know till this day, but we finally got them together, and that was it. And the poor officer, he was pretty worn out. Terrific responsibility to have a platoon of guys, and he went down the aid office, and they put him on a ship and sent him back, and I can remember about a month later he came back, and I heard he was back there, so I went down, and I remember he said to me, he said, "Rector, you're still here." I said, "Yeah, Lieutenant, I am. I'm still here." But his nerves were gone. He was shaking. And so they put him on a boat and sent him back and reassigned him someplace else, I'm sure. I had an acquaintance in New Haven, American Legion, who was worked on freighters, and of course all the supplies were brought in by ship, but there was no docks, so they had to use the duck boats. And I know he used to tell me, I'd see him every once in a while, and he'd say, "Oh," he said, "I couldn't wait to get away from that Anzio." He said they kept shelling us all the time down there. I said, "Yeah, they sure did." But they had a place that had quite a lot of trees on it, and they took a bulldozer and they drove it down in, and they made like a little movie theater. So every once in a while we'd have a movie we could go to if you were in the reserve unit and pulled back. You go to a movie.
About how long were you at Anzio? How long did it last?
It was around 3 months we were there before they jumped off.
So was it, of the 3 months, how much of it was actually fighting? Was it?
There wasn't a lot of fighting. It was just a lot of shelling.
And they had the high ground.
They had all the high
Montecasino
ground.
And
The Montecasino Abbey, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they had a huge railroad gun up there. And honest to God, that shell sounded like a boxcar going end over end when it was in the air. Mm-hmm. It was kind of whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. But it would blow a terrific hole in the ground. Unbelievable. And then, of course, they had to break out eventually in the spring. And so they used to have what we called a turkey shoot. Everybody'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you'd fire everything you had. And it would last maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then it would quit. And nobody did anything. Everybody was nervous and jerky. So that went on for 3 or 4 days, and then finally they told us we were going to jump off and attack, and we did. And I remember we started out, and I had a couple of my buddies. One was from Schenectady, and a young guy by the name of Franklin, and another kid from Ohio by the name of Weaver, who was really a nice kid too. And we took off, and we probably got a couple 100 yards out, and the fire was really bad, really tough. It was everything. So we just happened to come upon a hole, and we jumped into it. And my platoon officer came along, and he could have said either one of the names, but he said, "Rector, get out." He said, "You got to get this message and take it back to headquarters." I said, "Okay." So I'm going backwards, and there's still bullets are flying all over the place, and mortar fire and artillery and the whole bit. And I'd be passing some guys, and they'd say, get down, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I got to get this message back." So I got the message back, but unfortunately, while I was gone, my 2 buddies got hit either by an artillery shell, or they got hit by a mortar, and both of them were killed. And I didn't find that out till in the evening, and that was kind of shocking. I think of them every day. I say a little prayer for them. They're good guys.
And that was Weaver and Franklin? Weaver and Franklin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we continued the attack, and we went all the way up to Rome. We got to Rome and had a little bivouac area. The war was over for us. There were other units that continued on in the north, and we were stopped there, which was nice. And as a matter of fact, I got a picture out of it for my little bivouac area I had with some straw or hay thrown over the top of it. But there were very few airplanes then that the Germans had. But our Air Force was unbelievably strong up at Anzio all the time we were there. I know I saw two or three bombers that just got a direct hit in the gas tank or something. They just, boom, it just exploded. There were no parachutes, no nothing. And the fighter jets would come over and strafe the Germans. And that was very impressive. We were delighted to see the Air Force. They did a great job helping us. But while I was in Rome, and after things had settled down, and they'd give us passes to go into Rome, and that was a beautiful place to visit. I just missed an audience with the Pope by about 5 minutes, but I was in the Sistine Chapel and went through all the old Colosseum, because now they have boardwalks through, but we could walk right through on the ground where they kept all the animals and the gladiators and the whole bit. It was really interesting. And I went to Pompeii. They'd already started to evacuate that. And that was very interesting to see. Even not an opera person, but I went to an opera there, and that was really a fun thing. I enjoyed it because the real opera fans are kind of fanatic. When the soprano sings and does such a great job, we're all standing up and clapping and yelling soprano, soprano, and so I knew if something good was happening. I didn't understand it, but they did. That was good. And then we saw a wonderful show by Irving Berlin, put on a big show, and that was a fantastic show.
Give us an idea of the time frame. What month and year about are you in now?
I would be in, it'd be 43. It'd be probably July, August, in that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Then we were pulled back again, of course. They took us back to Naples, and we were supposed to get more amphibious training. I don't remember all the training, but maybe we got it. And then, of course, in the meetings, they told us we were going to invade Europe, Southern Europe. So away we go again. And so we got on the boats and landed. I landed in St. Raphael, which was and still is a big resort area. And we had very little difficulty. There was just a couple of big firefights on my left and right, and we just went through. The Germans were retreating, and they'd fight like crazy for 2 or 3 days, and then all of a sudden they'd just pull up and go out, and then they'd be chasing them. We seemed like we were walking 20 miles every day.
Did they have much help from their Air Force at this point, or what was?
Nah, not very, very little.
So we controlled the skies.
Yeah, I can remember the first jet they had. It was a very bright day, and all of a sudden, we had a group of bombers going over, and just kind of heard a whoosh, and geez, you looked, and here comes one of our bombers tumbling down, and I'd never seen anything like that before, heard anything. It was so fast compared to what we had. But fortunately, they didn't have very many, which was good. If they'd have got that, would have probably been a longer war. Yeah.
Okay, so you're at the St. Raphael and chasing the Germans. Where did that lead you?
Well, we kept chasing them, and they kept retreating, and we seemed to be off to the right side of southern France. We went up more towards the border of Switzerland. And there was quite a lot of opposition at some of the towns and things that we ran into. I can remember across the Durance River, and that was like the war movie. It wasn't all that deep, but I remember I had to hold my rifle up over my head, and because the water was up to my chest, but I'm not very tall anyway. But you know, you're soaking wet, and it was hot, and I know I kept walking, and finally I was hurting pretty good. My sergeant stopped me and said, "What's wrong with you, Rector?" And I said, "Just that my groin area is just all ground up." I said, "I can't. I'd have to walk with my legs spread. It was hurting." So she sent me to the aid office, and so I went to the aid office, and they sent me back to they hadn't got a hospital set up, but they were setting one up. They were flying everybody out, and so I was on a stretcher laying there, and they were going to fly me out, but they kept getting the hospital together, and so they treated me. I was there 3 or 4 days, and finally it crusted up, and it came off, and then I was okay again, so I rejoined my unit and went up, and I don't know what happened, but a short time later I got a bad case of dysentery and malaria and yellow jaundice all at the same time. And I was pretty sick, and so they sent me back, and this time they put me on a hospital ship, a British ship, and they sent me back to Africa. So I was gone about a month or more, and got cured and came back. That was kind of funny too. There were 13 of us they put in this room. We had our bunks at the hospital, and of course we were all hungry for food, and so after dinner at night we'd sneak down to the kitchen, and we started raiding the refrigerators and what have you, and we were eating the wrong foods that weren't good for us, and so they had to put a guard on our door at night, so we couldn't get out. That was kind of funny. So I finally went back to my unit. I can remember I was riding an old Liberty ship. They welded here and welded there. And there was a whole lot of machinery, road machinery on it, bulldozers and road scrapers, and our bunks were down there with them. And I said, if those chains break, I'm going to be crushed. So I slept in a cab of one of the road scrapers for a while at night. Just I said, I think that's a little safer than being in that bunk there. But they treated us pretty nice. It was great. Every night the cook would give us some crackers and hot chocolate and things till we got back to land and sent back to our units. And so I got back to mine. And
where was the unit when you rejoined it?
well, we were up in we were up towards the Siegfried line by then. Mm-hmm. And of course it was getting winter again.
It's be winter of 44?
It'd be 44,
yeah.
The winter of 44. And it was a lot of snow. And of course it was cold. We breached the Siegfried line. There was a lot of heavy fighting there. I still keep in contact with my old medic. Somehow him and I got together. I don't know how it happened, but we were in the mountains. I remember we got caught, and they were throwing mortars and artillery and everything. We were in the woods, and the shrapnel would be hitting the trees and going this way and that way, and so we saw this hole. And if you had any time at all and you were stalled, you could get small logs and things and put over your hole to protect you. And we both saw this hole at the same time, and I remember Joe, he ran and he dove in ahead of me, and I followed him, but when I dove, my pack came up off him. It caught on one of the top of the logs, but I'm running, but my feet are in the air. I wasn't hitting the ground. I had to backtrack and get my feet back on the ground so I could get underneath. We laughed about that a few times. We call each other 2 or 3 times a month and talk. He's not very well now. He's
What's
a
his
little
name?
older than I am.
What's his name? It's Joe.
Joe Wilson.
Joe Wilson. Where's Joe live?
Joe lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Nice guy. As a matter of fact, I just called him just before Christmas and talked to him. But he's not doing well now, unfortunately. He's got a little dementia. Mm-hmm. But I'll keep in contact with him as long as we can do it. I went to, I was fortunate enough after teaching for a long time, I was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame is in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So I wanted to see my name on the wall. I had seen it on the computer, but I said, I think I'd like to see it in person. So we jumped in the car and drove out there, and I called Joe and told him I was coming, so we got together and spent a day together out there in Tulsa. That was a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
We breached the Siegfried line, but what happened is the Germans made the big counterattack in the north. Bastogne, which was a terrible battle, I'm sure. And they also attacked in the south, which didn't get a lot of publicity, but we retreated 10 miles one night. And I had two buddies, Sergeant Wims and Carl Edwards. And I kind of lost track of them after the war, and we weren't great buddies, but we knew each other. Carl had been captured in Italy once and escaped a couple times and recaptured. And Wims, he got, I remember there was a big pillbox, and we went by it with no problem. Of course, we were going backwards, probably in a hurry, and Wims got captured there. And I don't know, long afterwards, a number of years afterwards, I was sitting here in my living room, and I'd just gotten back from playing golf, and a phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Carl Edwards, and he said, "Wims and I are sitting here," he said, "in my house," and he said, "Your name came up," and he said, "We wondered what you were doing." And so we chatted a while, and I talked to Wims, and I said, "Well," I said, "I have tickets to the Boston College game in about 3 weeks. They're playing Miami." And I said, "I'll be up that way." I said, "We can get together." And he said, "Oh, that would be super." So we got together, the three of us, and had dinner together and shot the breeze. And unfortunately, within the year, both of them passed away. So didn't get to see them again. But we retreated the 10 miles, and then we held our ground, and things got a little better, and then we started attacking again, and we went up, and then we kind of came back down the south. We were headed towards Nuremberg and in that way. We would come up on these little hamlets and towns, and the tanks of General Patton had been ahead of us. And they'd put a tank on all four sides of the town and then take off again and go. Well, most of them gave up quite easily and surrendered, but some of them, they fought very diligently, house to house. Fortunately, I never got involved in house-to-house fighting, but I was by one of our 155 artillery pieces one time, and I've forgotten what town it was, but I think it was Schaffensburg. And they'd load that cannon up and get the grids and fire away, and then the whole house would just disappear.
So the Germans were hiding in the midst of the villages,
yeah,
the
they were
homes, and
dug in. They held on to, for some reason, a fanatical officer, and I believe it was like a training area for German soldiers. So they had most everything they needed, food, ammunition, the whole bit, and they wanted to hold on to that town.
yeah.
Village quite firmly, so that was pretty nasty fighting there, but I was not directly involved in that one. Yeah, we moved on, and I can remember going into Dachau, the concentration camp, and it was I don't know. You just can't believe that one human would do that to another human. There was boxcar after boxcar of bodies just thrown into them. And
Did the Germans just desert
yeah,
back out? There were none left there?
They left. And unfortunately, we let some of them out, and then we had to regroup them, the inmates, together because they were full of sores and malnutrition. I can remember we threw some biscuits from our rations out on the ground, and they were like dogs, you know. They just.
How many people do you think, how many of the inmates do you think were there at the time that you entered?
I really wouldn't have any idea.
Hundreds?
It had to be hundreds of them. It was awful. The ovens were still there. Unbelievable. The bodies. Fortunately, we didn't stay long. We moved on, and of course, other units came behind to take care of them and get them together and go.
How long were you actually in the camp, do you think?
I was probably there a day and a half, maybe two at the most.
And your duties there were just to occupy this. What did they have you doing in that day and a half?
Yeah, we had to round some of them back up again and get them together so they could be treated and taken care of. But so many of them were so malnutritioned they couldn't do anything anyway.
Yeah. What was the reaction when they saw you come through there?
Oh, it's hard to explain it. It was like, I guess, a resurrection. That they were free and they were safe again. They weren't being misused. They were going to have food. They were going to have water. It was not a good scene. Not a good scene at all.
How did you feel about it? Did you feel happy to help? What was your emotions?
I was glad that we got to the camp and freed them. Just too bad that it was so late for so many of them. I've been fortunate enough that two temples in Syracuse the last couple of years have asked me to come down and light a candle for the refugees. So I'm glad they're keeping that alive for their kids, but they're having the problem too. I remember this last fall I was down there, and a young Jewish man came up to me and said, I hate to admit it, he said, but I'm having trouble with my own children explaining to him what really happened. And that's sad. Nobody should ever forget that. That was terrible. I can't believe it to this day. And I've heard people say, well, that never happened. It happened.
Well, and that's why we want to retain this for all of history, because you were there.
Yeah.
You saw it. You experienced it.
I have hopes of getting to Washington, D.C. and visiting the Holocaust Museum. It's kind of one of my goals before I pass away. I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Not because it's something I want to remember, but I think I just want to kind of pay tribute to them. That's a terrible, terrible, terrible time.
It was well done, and it's a dark place, but it was well done.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
From my perspective, anyway.
Well, from there it was kind of some of the villages and towns would put up a firefight. And finally we got to Munich. I can remember we'd be walking along, and a lot of the Germans would surrender. Some kids would be up in a barn or a garage or whatever you want to call it, a house, and they'd have a white rag on a stick or something and wanted to surrender and get out of the way, and you'd have to keep just waving them back, let the next one deal with it and go.
Had the Germans officially
No,
capitulated? So they were still engaged, but weakening, obviously.
yeah, they were weakening fast by then. Had an interesting experience too in the mountains of in the Osage Mountains. I didn't capture them, but our unit captured 4 Germans, and one of them was shot up pretty good. And my platoon officer, he said, it's late at night, it's darker than hell in the forest, and he said, I want you to take these guys and take them back. Well, take them back where, you know? So I got 4 German soldiers carrying this guy on a stretcher, and I was lucky. I ran into a water truck, and they were dumping water, so I figured they had to go back where there were a lot of people. And I said, how about you guys taking these blokes for me and getting them out of here? They said, no problem, put them on the truck. So we put them on the truck, and so I went back to my unit, and a couple days later my first sergeant called me down to his foxhole. He said, Rector, what happened to those guys? I said, beats me. I said, I ran into a water truck and they were going back to the company, so I gave them to them, and they took them back. I said, well, what's the big deal? He said, well, the German died, and they wanted to know why. And I thought that was peculiar in the middle of a war. They'd be so concerned about one person dying when they were there were a lot of casualties that nobody cared about.
Yeah.
But it was nothing that I did to him. He was shot up, that's all. And of course medical attention wasn't that good. I had an officer in one of our skirmishes that got hit in the shoulder, and you never like to minimize anything, but you know, shock killed him more than the wound itself. Mm-hmm. That's a sad thing. I'm sure things are better today medically, but you hate to see anybody with a so-called minor wound have to pass away. When we got to Munich, we kind of lived it up for 4 or 5 days. We liberated a beautiful apartment, me and 2 or 3 other guys. And we even had maid service. They come in and make up the bed every day. And there was a nice pool, and we got to do some swimming, and the attendants kept everything going for us, and that didn't last long. Once they found out why we were pulled away and put back where we belonged.
So how did the citizens treat you, the German citizens, the non-military folks? I mean, obviously you just had a good experience with the apartment, but
some of the citizens were good. Some of them were quite angry and upset. But I think by that time they'd had enough war to
And they still hadn't
They hadn't surrendered
surrendered yet?
No, they were still fighting. But I think they could see the writing on the wall. I can remember we were pulled into one area. Our tanks were in a bad situation, and they wanted us to stay with them and actually protect them, help protect them. And it was maybe 35, 40 miles from Schweinfurt, which was a huge ball bearing producing place. And the British would come over at night, and they just area bombed. They just picked out a square and just dropped bombs. In the daytime, the Americans would come along with the Sperry bomb site, but I can remember it was just a cloud of dust all day long. That's all it was. And you could hear the rumble all the time.
They just kept heading on.
Yeah.
Did you ever, were you ever in the vicinity of any of the German tanks, the Panzers or the Tigers or tanks?
I wasn't that close to it, but one of my platoon members ran up to one. Thought in the dark, thought it was our tank, and it was a German tank, and the guy shot. It was a single shot, but he had a book or thick pad or something in his. We had a pocket, and it hit that, and it knocked him over, but didn't kill him. He got away. I saw our own tanks, not in combat, but I saw them when they'd pull in and they'd want to park them for the night or whatever and set up an area. They didn't care if they took a building down, and they'd just back it in or drive it in forward. No, I never saw a tank battle. Just once, I remember in the Osage Mountains, they passed the word down to fix bayonets. That was not a happy moment at all. Didn't want to hear that.
When they said to fix bayonets, did that mean did they always do that, or was that just, tell us a little bit about the meaning of that.
Well, that means that the enemy's close by and they're coming at you, or you're going after them. And you can remember reaching back over and grabbing it and putting it on, and I said, I'm not going to enjoy this, I know that. But fortunately, nothing happened, so we got out of it. I was with my squad one day in Germany. I've forgotten where it was we were behind the fence, a stone wall fence, and we got pinned down. There was a machine gun nest, and we were trying to get out of there, and we really didn't know what to do. But I know my officer said to me, he said, Rector, he said, you go over that way and crawl, he said, and get behind that machine gun nest. I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. So I started crawling, but it was all flat ground. There were no trees. There was no kind of barriers at all. And I got maybe 10 or 12, 15 feet out from behind the fence. I'm crawling on the ground, and the bullets from the machine gun are coming across my head. They're hitting in front of me on my face in the ground. And probably the best words I heard was when he said, Rector, you better come back. So I turned around and came back. I'm no Audie Murphy.
Now, you received the Purple Heart. At what point did you become injured? To get
well, it really wasn't a combat situation. We'd captured a small town, and it was a major road, and Americans were coming up, and the trucks were just back to back. And of course, they only had those little dim lights in front of them, and it was a beautiful moonlit night. And so we were, a couple of my buddies, we had this house, so we took the house over instead of sleeping on the ground. We thought, oh, we'll use the house. So we went outside. We said, geez, a beautiful night. We heard the airplane, and we said, let's a bit so we can see that airplane. And because he was looking for them. Well, we got out, and we were in the street, and we're looking up in the beautiful blue, and I could see it, and all of a sudden he opened up with the machine guns on them, and he hit my buddy pretty good, but all I got was a little piece. I got hit by a little piece of shrapnel, and in the hand, but burned more than it really penetrated. That's an easy way to get a Purple Heart, I guess.
You got a little too curious, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it was funny. Well, we saw the airplane, but it wasn't a good experience. I had to treat my buddy and take his pouch off of him and the sulfa powder and all that, and get him back to the aid station. So after that, we decided that wouldn't be a good thing to do anymore.
Well, sometimes we forget you were probably, what, 20 years old at the time?
Oh, yeah.
You did think a little differently than you do now.
Sure do.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. So the Germans still haven't surrendered at this point, correct?
No, they hadn't surrendered. It went on, and there was a couple of more heavy skirmishes. Well, Schaffensburg was a tough fight, and then after that, it kind of cooled down, and then they said the war is over, and everybody was happy, and unfortunately, a lot of them started shooting guns and anti-aircrafts and what have you in the air, and I said, what goes up must come down. So there was a house nearby, so I stayed in the house. I said, I'll do my celebrating in there.
Yeah.
And then we moved on up into Austria, which was absolutely gorgeous. I'm not a mountain man, but those the Alps were just fantastic. You could be up high and look down. You could see the stones in the lake and the things. They're so beautiful. They had zip lines. They were like little farm communities, and they'd have these zip lines that took the manure up to the fields and brought it back, and it would snow a little bit every night up on the top of the mountains, and you'd have to put a little light jacket on when you went to get your chow in the morning and things. Mm-hmm. And then they'd march us to keep us busy, I think, and 2 or 3 miles over to a lake and let us swim for a while and bring us back. And then finally they had a point system. You got 5 points for the Purple Heart and 5 points for landings and points for major battles. And if you had 30, I think it was 30, you were going to be separated from the division. So I had just the right number of points. So I got sent to a big repel depot in France, and my unit got sent back to the United States. So I was stuck in Europe for about 30 days, but I didn't complain. I had a good time. I was in charge of the supply house and took care of extra rifles and machine guns and what have you, and I played a little softball and had a couple of good practices. I wasn't really that good, but I made the battalion softball team and played some softball and against very, very good competition. And I'd have to go get put clothing together and go take it to the prisoners that had gone AWOL from the United States Army, re-equip them, have to go into the compound. I was glad to get out of there. Again, although they were all pretty good guys, I never had any problem. They're all pretty good guys. And had to get 4 kegs of beer from the local brewery and put it in all the platoons so the boys could have a beer when they wanted it. And then finally I got on the ship and came home.
Okay, the war's ended and you're headed home. So tell us how you got home from Europe.
Well, I was stationed in Belgium for a while, and my unit had been sent home 30 days earlier, but because of the point system, I stayed there, which was fine because the Japanese War was still on, and my unit was going to head to the Pacific after a 30-day leave at home. So there were no regrets about staying there, even though they got discharged long before I did. But anyway, just got put on a ship and landed in Boston, and then they transported us by train down to Fort Dix, and that's a continual process, 24 hours a day. They were taking people through, and you had a guide that took a group at a time through, and we found out that it's best that you tip them because they could make life a lot easier for you going through and getting all the processing done quickly, whereas if you hassled them, they could make it a more difficult situation. So I was discharged and jumped the train and came home to Mexico.
So what time of day did you get home, and who met you at the train station?
My dad and mother picked me up at the train station in Syracuse and brought me home, and it was nice to be home and be in bed and nice clean place to live again. It was great.
What did your mom say to you when she first saw you and talked to you?
She was so happy. She was almost crying. She was so happy to see me come back home alive and not banged up. My dad was just kind of nonchalant about it, but I think he was, overall, I think he felt good that I came back because he thought I was never going to go anyway.
Yeah. What do you think you missed the most when you were away from home? Sometimes different people miss different things after being away and living like you had to live.
I didn't really miss anything, to be perfectly honest with you. The only thing I really remember, and I mentioned it yesterday in conversation with my girlfriend, I said, a number of years ago today, on Christmas Day, I can remember the Red Cross came in, which they always did when we were in an 8-4 situation. They'd come in and sing the same song, "I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places." And I knew it was about time that we were going to head back up to the front again. I can remember walking up the trail, and all of a sudden it kind of hit me. I said, oh, kind of got teary-eyed, and I said, better get over this because it's a long way yet to go go home. That was the only time I really thought about. Other than that, I was never homesick and about it or anything.
Yeah. All right, so you're home. What did you do the first few weeks that you were back to Mexico?
Drank too much. I never was I never drank until I got out of the service, really. And my buddies were home, and we'd be tearing around the countryside at night. Syracuse was pretty wide open at the time, and we'd go down and get into those places where they were gambling and after hours and everything else. And we used to go out to Oswego State because they didn't have as many dormitories then for the girls, and we knew the houses where they were staying, and you could just go in and yell, "Anybody want to go out tonight and have fun?" And there was always somebody available, and we did that. And, finally got serious and said we're going to have to do something here in life and support ourselves. So I wasn't the brightest boy in America by any means, and I thought maybe I could go to college. So I jumped in the car and I went down to Syracuse, and they'd take me as long as I took some remedial math. I went up to St. Lawrence University. I thought I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, and they said, "Well, take you in a minute, but you'll have to have some remedial math." And I jumped in the car one day and I drove down to Ithaca College with a couple of guys, and I can still see Larry Laurence. He sitting in his office, and he just waved us in, and we told him what we were interested in, and that wasn't elementary teaching, that was physical education. And so we talked, and he said, "Oh, going to start a program," he said, "in a couple of weeks," he said, "just for veterans." He said, "So you can jump right into it." Well, that sounded good to me, so that's what I did. The other two didn't do that. They decided not to go to school. I went to school there at St. Lawrence, or at Ithaca College, and we went straight through 3 years and graduated.
Mm-hmm. So you came out as a physical education teacher.
Yep.
Yep. Just give us a quick summary of where you worked and where you ended up in your professional career.
I graduated in '48, and that summer I just took a job at the college camp, and sometimes when the cook wanted the weekend off, he'd just leave me there, and I'd make sure that I got breakfast for all the people that were there, whether it be a 4-H group or a church group or college kids, whatever. And I just did general work around the camp. And then that fall I got a job in Townsend, Vermont, very small town. Was a semi-private school, but actually it was a day school because all the towns paid the school to send the students there. And I coached there for 2 years, and that's where I met my wife.
What's your wife's name? What was your wife's name? What was your wife's name?
Mary Ellen. Mm-hmm. She was Mary Ellen Mahosik. Her husband was killed in World War II. He was, that's another story, a great story. Very briefly, she thought he was killed serving the underground in Norway. And a few years ago, my daughter-in-law, one of them, was just monkeying around on the computer and typed his name in and found out that a Norwegian fisherman had found his body in the water, in his net, and he was smart enough. He took his dog tags off and let the body go, but he took the dog tags to the State Department, and lo and behold, turned out John McHugh was then the still representative here for the district, came down and presented the dog tags to my wife and my adopted daughter, who Mary Ellen had by her first husband. So, and it was a great story.
When did the body was found during the war? Or?
During the war, he found the body, yeah. It was just one of two of the crewmen that they found.
So she had some closure. She knew.
Had closure, yeah. Unfortunately, my wife had dementia at the time, and I don't think that it really sunk into her, you know, what
So the dog tags were presented much later?
Yeah.
How did it happen? Why was there so much time between?
I have no idea why.
The dog tags surfaced after?
It just came up all of a sudden, and then my daughter-in-law, the Norwegian didn't speak very good English, but enough so they corresponded back and forth 2 or 3 times, and got the dog tags back here to the United States, and so they had a little closure on it. I thought it was a big deal myself.
Yeah. But all those years later.
Yeah. It's a great story, but sorry, passed away, but stuff happens in war.
Yeah. So you're in Vermont, and then
I
where'd
taught
you head
there
next?
for 2 years and had a nice career, and not much money, but we were happy. And I had a very good string of good athletes there. We won a small tri-state basketball tournament out there between Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Vermont. And then I came to Adams Center and got the job teaching PE there. I was there for 6 years, and then there was a job opening in Mexico, and they wanted to start a wrestling program, and so the superintendent hired me, and I started the wrestling program in Mexico and finished 30 years here.
And you ultimately, your final job with the Mexico School District was?
My final jobs were with Mexico, yeah.
And in what position?
I was a PE teacher, and then I became director of PE, and then they gave me directorship of athletics and PE for the school district.
Okay. All right. We normally would move to the reflections part of the interview, as long as there's nothing else that comes to mind that you want to talk about that maybe we forgot to talk about during the war. Are you anything come to mind, or if so, we'll move to the next phase?
Yeah, I think we probably covered it pretty
good.
Pretty good all the way through.
All right. Let's tell us how your wartime experience impacted your life and changed it. And what's your view on that?
Well, war doesn't solve anything, unfortunately. I was a hawk, unfortunately. In Vietnam, I thought we were doing the right thing, and I was absolutely wrong. And I think my thinking has changed since then. I think other people have got to step forward besides us, even though our country is very strong mentally and military-wise, I think the other countries have got to take care of some of their own problems and not send our kids over to be killed and injured. It's medically, I'm sure everything is better, but when you see all these guys with multiple limbs missing and things, I don't know. It's not good. I want our country to be strong, but I want other people to step in and help.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This video will be viewed decades potentially from now by family members and young men and women who are considering joining the service. Hopefully some politicians will listen to the message that you just delivered. But what would you say to the future, possibly unborn people that are considering joining the service someday? What would you like to tell them to consider as they make that decision?
I personally would not object to seeing children as they mature serve a year or two in the military. I think the discipline and things would do most of them more good than harm, mm-hmm. no matter what their intelligence is. I wouldn't want it to be a selective process. I would want everybody to do it. I think it would be a very good thing for our country.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the interview at this point?
Well, I'm very thankful for what you people do. I think you've done a tremendous job. You're professional from beginning to end. And
thank you.
I appreciate the time and effort that you're putting into what you're doing. And I think it's, as you do, that it's important that they never forget what happened.
We view your stories as absolutely sacred, and most of all, I'd like to thank you, and a grateful nation would like to thank you for your service to our country. You've traveled far and seen much, and we owe you a great debt of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you.